Okay, Assalamu alaikum. In previous class we talked about JavaScript and how we use JavaScript and basic variable in JavaScript. Today we're going to talk about something called functions within our JavaScript. Now, functions are basically a piece of code that allows us to a piece or block of code that allows us to combine certain statements that perform a repetitive function or perform some set of rules or some set of instructions together. For example, if you want to perform some operations of arithmetic operations on certain value again and again, so instead of writing the code for every time you need to perform that action, you create a function and write the code inside it, and then you pass it a value and it performs a function. So it becomes easier to manage and easy to work with. Similarly, functions are basically a very easy way of managing complex tasks and breaking complex tasks so that you don't have to write the repetitive codes. Functions, simply speaking, a block of code that execute a particular task or that do a particular task, that perform a particular task. In in JavaScript, what we need to do is we need to write a function called function function. And this is the syntax of writing a function. Then we specify the name of function, name of function, okay, and then if I don't give a space, and then you give basically the function brackets, bracket close, bracket start. This is typically what we specify within our function. The function keyword itself, that's how it knows that you are writing a function. The name of the function, the brackets, and this brackets usually contains arguments if there are any. And then a block of code starts and block of code closes. Okay, so let's try this. Let's give it an example how we can do that. Okay, so for example, we come here and let me write an HTML. Close this, backslash HTML. Okay, Control S, and let me save this. Where we have been saving the previous codes. If I go here and if I write file JS functions, okay, .html, again we are using HTML file. Remember, JavaScript file also is embedded inside HTML. So every time we save, we basically saving an HTML file. So we use an HTML extension and then we write the code inside that HTML extension. Okay, so head and then we have backslash head, and then we have a body, and we have a backslash body tag. Okay, so now within this tag we write something called script. That's how basically we have some we are able to write our JavaScript code. So backslash script. Okay, here we go. So the basic code is available. Now what we need to do now is we need to write something called function. Okay, so as soon as you write, this becomes my function, and then name, for example, I don't know what we can say, power function, my power. Okay, bracket close, bracket start. Now this basically means that we are going to create a function called my power. Let's not just like this. Okay, and within this I need two variables. So for example, variable 1 comma variable 2. Again, we talked about variables in previous class as well. Basically, variables are containers that hold your data. Okay, so here we have specified two variables that will basically allow us to save our data. Within this variables, we basically create something called value. So for example, I can say again another variable ans answer is equals to variable 1 multiplied by variable 2 semicolon. So what this will do is it will take the value of this variable 2 and multiply it with this variable value 1, and then assign the answer to the answer value. Then we can simply come here and we can say document.write. Okay, and we can print the answer, bracket start, the answer is, and then we can say plus ans. Okay, so the answer would be printed. So if I save this page and click on the live view, now what should happen? Typically we are expecting an answer. Okay, but now remember, we have written a function. The difference between function and a normal code again is that normal code would execute as per its interpretive line by line. It will go anywhere. When you write a function, you have to call a function. When you write a normal JavaScript code or HTML code, each code executes line by line. Okay, and it would be executed no matter what. However, when you write a function, you need to call that function. Okay, so because function is basically a set of code, it's a block of code that performs a specific task. So you need to call every time you want that task to be performed. Okay, so whenever you need a certain task to be performed, you call that function. If that task is not required, you don't call that function. Whether you're using in JavaScript or Java or any other programming language, the same concept basically flows. In Java, we usually use the word methods. So if you from Java, we use the word method. Again, same principle. We create a method block of code that's called method declaration. So we have basically declared a method. Now at some point, we basically need to call this method, which will allow us to execute the code inside this method. So for example, I can write a paragraph tag. Okay, and this, okay, not here, sorry. Paragraph is basically a simple HTML tag. So we come outside of the standard script tag, and now we are back to a normal HTML. This is my paragraph. In fact, after this body, let me give an h1. Okay, and I can write Java script script functions example, and then within this is my paragraph. We have our paragraphs available. Okay, and then after this, I can create another paragraph as well. For now, within this, I can, let's do this. Instead of creating a paragraph, let me create something called button. Okay, button on click. Okay, on click, what should happen now? Here basically we will say my power, power, power. Okay, so now, and I think we should close this and then click here. Okay, so now what we have done is we have created a simple text. If I come back here, you can see the output here, my JavaScript function, this is my paragraph, we have a button available. What this would do now is that we have created a button, we have created an event on that button called on click. Basically, it means that whenever you click on that particular button, it would perform a certain action. That action is my power. Now we talked about this in previous class as well. My power again is a JavaScript code. Here we have called that event without using the script tag, without telling it that it's a JavaScript code. We have just specified the name of function here. This is to a certain extent inbuilt JavaScript code. Usually whenever you put an on click, HTML or the browser understands that you are going to call some form of JavaScript that would actually be triggered. Okay, so in that case, no need to write your JavaScript script tag. Okay, so in other words, it's implicitly available inside your my click event. Okay, so this script definition is implicitly available and you don't need to specify here. All you need to do is just give it my power value. Now remember, my power value had two variables. What if I don't give a variables? If I click on save here, come back here, see this, the answer is nan. Okay, so it generates the answer. Okay, because we have written document.write, the answer is, but the answer is not available. nan, not a known. Norm commonly says it's like a null value, or yeah, it's like a null value if you say, or a no value, because we didn't specify any argument. So for example, if I specify 5,5, press S, now the output is back. Now if I here, so we get a 5 plus 25 answer here. I hope you can see that. So basically, this is what a simple on-click event can generate. Now, button is a simple class that allows us to have a button, simple attribute, sorry, of HTML that allows us to have a button here. And on-click basically is an event on that button that can be determined using a particular function. So we create functions in JavaScript simply by using a word called function. It's a keyword, it's a reserved word within JavaScript that determines that you're using a function. We give it a function name, parenthesis, and then within this parenthesis, if there are any arguments, we specify the number of arguments, block start, block close, as simple as that. Then whatever code you write inside this function gets executed. Let's create another example. So in this case, let me create another paragraph. If I come back into my code, okay, I create another paragraph and that's it. Okay, at this time I've given this paragraph something called an ID, which can be, for example, answer or ANS. Okay, if you want, I can also specify style here, inline CSS. Within this, we can specify something color, and it can be, for example, red. Let's just give it a semicolon and then maybe font size. This can be, for example, 50, so it appears big, and then maybe let's just leave it to that point. Okay, so we have a simple paragraph. Then we come here again, script tag, and we close this. Here we go. Now, like discussed previously, you can insert as many script tags as you want. It is not necessary that you insert or write only one script and write all the JavaScript inside it. So just be sure that if you are using the script tag, if you are going to inject or use some content of your HTML, those content should be defined first. Now, the sequence of execution, in other words, would be that it would be executed line by line. So first this is script, then this is script, then this is script, then this tag, then this is script. So it would execute line by line. So if your script is using something, it should already be declared before that script, okay, like your HTML tag. So if I'm going to use this HTML tag inside my script, this tag needs to be specified first. Now within this, for example, let's just create another function called add, okay, bracket start, bracket close. Within the add function, let's just give it value 1, comma value 2. Okay, sorry, not this apostrophe, I don't need it. Okay, so we declare two variables. Now let me specify something called return, value 1 plus value 2. Now here we have used something called return. Return basically means a return type. In simple terms, in Java or in C++, whenever we declared a method, we specified something called void, V-O-I-D. Void means that method had no return type. If the method was supposed to return something, then instead of that void, we had to write the data type, the type of answer the method would return. In JavaScript, because in functions there is no return type, you only need to specify the function as a keyword, then the name of the function and the arguments. There is no specification of a return value. One reason being that in JavaScript, we do not specify the data type explicitly. Okay, the data type is handled implicitly, automatically, in other words, by JavaScript and the browser. So you only specify something called var as a container. Okay, then whatever value you assign to that container would be automatically its data type. In JavaScript, because there is no explicit mentioning of data types such as int for integer, byte for byte, short in string, so we don't even need to specify the return type with the function name as well. All you do is you specify the function as a function by keyword, as a variable name, as a function name, the name of the function itself. Then if that function is supposed to return a value, you just write the word return and return a value. Okay, this would be automatically handled by JavaScript. Now again, what is a return, or what is the purpose of return? Return basically means replying or giving an answer. Whenever a function is invoked, called, it executes, it performs its certain tasks, and then it dies away. For example, in our first case, we created a function. Okay, what did function did? It multiplied two variables, it printed the output on your browser. That's it. Nothing else it did. However, in this case, once we specified something called a return value, now it means that once this method or this function executes, after performing its actions, it will return certain value. It would give us a reply. Okay, that reply can be the calculation answer itself. That reply can be that the operation went successful. That reply can be an error, that there is an error in the code. That reply can be anything. And we generate that reply by using a word called return, which is again a keyword, a reserved word for JavaScript itself. Return basically means that once you execute this method, after completion, this method would actually give you a reply. Okay, so once I complete this method or execute this method will be replying to me, giving me an answer. This method doesn't reply me. It would perform its task, then go away. I don't know whether the task was successful or not. However, in this case, I can see, I can check and find out that it performed its task as I wanted it or not. Okay, so that's why we tend to use return sometimes commonly to understand that whether the operation or the task was successful or not. Now, this returns a value. Okay, where it should return a value. So I come back here after the function. Now I don't need to put the output inside the function. After the function, I come here and let me just say, let me use a document dot some get element by ID. Okay, let me give the ID name. Now we have used this previously as well. This basically means document again represents your web page content area. So this area of your web page is considered as your document. Okay, and if I come here, within my editor, I have a document dot get element by ID. By elements are again referred to the HTML tags. So here it means that get an HTML tag that has ID called answer. You know, it's like spying. Find my spy that has an ID called answer. Whatever ID you specify to that particular tag would now be able to read by this JavaScript code. Okay, so JavaScript can read your HTML tags, can insert data into your HTML tags based on the ID. So IDs are used by JavaScript to understand which tag we are basically using. So here we said, go inside your HTML document. There is an element name called answer. Okay, there's an element with an ID called answer. That's my secret code. Find that element. Once you do that, dot go inside its inner HTML. Go inside that particular tag. And then what we can do? You can read it, you can process it, you can change it, or we set it a value called add bracket start bracket close semicolon. And for example, I give it 2 values. Or what if I don't give it a value? I save it. Okay, I come back into my browser. I see an error called NAN. Okay, I see a big error called NAN. That's because my ID is here. That paragraph is here. JavaScript is coming on. JavaScript goes into this your tag. It finds the information and injects your using inner HTML this add method. Now what happened here is that add has returned something called NAN. NAN means not a number, unknown value, or in sometimes in Java we refer to word called null. Means there is no value there. Okay, so in this case it's not a number, not a value, nothing. Okay, there is nothing here to present. So in that case because it is looking for a value, it needs certain value to print here, but there is no value. So instead of giving a blank, it has given us NaN. To check the output, we go into inside your console. Control-Shift-I, you can come inside your console and see what errors there are. For example, I come here and I remove this line, or I change this variable answer to. Control-S. Now if I come back here, again you would see there is no output here. However, if I come into console, you can see the error, the inner HTML null. Okay, this basically means that JavaScript is capable of generating errors. HTML wasn't, CSS wasn't. HTML, CSS don't generate errors. So even if you make a blunder, it won't tell you anything. It will try to go very smoothly and very decently. Okay. However, JavaScript generates an error. Sometimes those generate errors can be in form of not a value, that you try to do something but it didn't find it and it just give you NaN. Or it will give a more detailed error, but not on your browser output. It will give you error on your console. So on your browser, you need to press Control-Shift-I, enable that console value. If it's by default in Elements, click on this console tab here. Go inside it and try to read the error. What is the error that it has generated? Okay, so in this case, it says inner HTML null, which basically means that it went inside your code and it's trying to find something called answer. However, we renamed it to answer to. So that's why it was not able to generate this error. To even certain extent, if you change the variable names or tag is missing or whatever other errors, that errors can be identified here. So now you see there is no error here. There is no technical error. However, the output that is being generated from this add method is not a number. Okay, NaN. So what we need to do is we need to come back here. We need to process 5, 5, press S again, and now we get a 10 answer. So now what's happening is that if I come back here, and let me just bring this smaller size, so actually I can bring the code a little bit so you can read it better. So now what's happening in this case is that we wrote a script, we wrote a function, and then we called document.getElement by ID, answer, inner HTML, and we processed the method here. So here, instead of doing 5 by 5, we called a function called add, and that function performed a certain task for us. Similarly, we can use this function to do lots of different tasks as well. Function add, we can add as many parameters as we want. It's up to us. Okay, a function can be invoked based on certain event. A function can be invoked based on a user's triggering event, or it just can be event as a regular statement. So in previous example, we called it based on a click event. In next example, it was just executed as a regular statement. We can invoke a function that, for example, I need to enter a telephone number. So we can add a function with a key press event on your text field, that every time a user enters a text field, if that is a number, then it should be allowed. If a user press A, he should not be allowed to enter that number. So using JavaScript, we can control the key press, key release events as well. We can on a text field, we can control other types of events. And every time a user presses a key, a function is evoked which validates whether that key is accurate, should be inserted or not. For example, as a telephone should only contain numbers, but if user is pressing A, means that's an incorrect number is entering. So instead of typing, it would automatically give an error or won't do anything and won't type the number. So you will bound to use whatever you want. Okay. So we can do lots of things with JavaScript as well. We can call lots of functions. We can have multiple functions perform various different tasks. Okay, so in next example we will be talking more about how we can use functions and what other operations we can perform on the functions. Okay, thank you very much for watching. See you around.